I want you to ask yourself, if you were the wife of somebody who literally was publicly executed, and there was a detail that was charged with providing security from them, and they didn't clear a roof, the only roof that would have technically been in a clear line of sight of Charlie, and they literally put him into a kill box, and they allowed him to get executed, and then they completely failed at their job. Why, in what world, what reality would you ever be contracting those exact same security guards to protect you? Make this make sense for me, folks. Somebody please explain. Give me a logical explanation on why you would ever use that same security detail. Something's not adding up here, folks, and I don't know what it is, but it stinks like shit.
Why not be transparent? There's nothing to hide. I know there's not, because I've seen what the case is built on. Let everyone see what true evil is. This is something that could impact a generation and generations to come.
When a hero stumbles, well, the cowards rejoice. Nothing feels better to a coward than to watch a brave guy falls. And these people that talk about me, these cowards that rejoice, well, they don't understand what greatness looks like.
Something is very wrong in this story, and everyone feels it. They just can't quite put their finger on it. One comedian finally said the quiet part out loud, and instantly the entire internet erupted. Dave Chappelle drops one line about Charlie Kirk's death, and suddenly Erika Kirk and Kash Patel are being dragged into the spotlight with receipts nobody was supposed to see. Because if this case was really as simple as the official story claims, why is every person who tries to ask a question either silenced, mocked, or shoved out of the room? Erika says there's nothing to hide, but every time she says it, more cracks show in the narrative. Cameras removed, files locked, witnesses gagged, a trial smothered before it can even start. And just when everyone thought the noise was finally settling, Dave blows open a whole new wave of scrutiny, not by accusing anyone, but by pointing out how terrified people are of even mentioning Charlie's name. That alone sent shockwaves through the political world, the donor world, and the people who were closest to Charlie in those final days. And here's where things get wild. The people being questioned the most right now aren't fringe theorists or internet trolls, but the exact individuals who should be demanding answers. Erika Kirk, now in full control of Charlie's empire. Kash Patel, the man overseeing the investigation, both insisting everything is fine, while every new leak suggests the opposite. And once you see the pattern forming behind the scenes, the sudden panic around Dave's comments starts to make sense, because it hits way too close to the truth. From the moment news broke about Charlie Kirk's death, nothing about the story felt clean. Not the timing, not the location, and definitely not the way the details were rushed out, polished, and packaged like everyone was supposed to nod along and move on. Charlie was shot in broad daylight on a campus filled with students, cameras, security, and staff. Yet somehow the narrative we got was thinner than a whisper. No full autopsy released, no clear ballistics trail, no official timeline that actually lines up. It's like the more you look at the story, the more it behaves like smoke. The second you think you've grabbed something solid, it fades. But what really set people off were the pieces that vanished. Footage from behind Charlie, gone. Statements from people who are right there, suddenly quiet. And then, as if someone hit a giant mute button over Utah, witnesses start hinting that they were told not to share anything, not even private recordings. Combine that with the judge dropping a gag order big enough to suffocate half the state, and it starts feeling less like an investigation and more like a controlled demolition of public information. And through all this noise, one question keeps echoing louder. How does an event so public end up leaving behind a trail this empty? Mistakes happen, sure, but this wasn't sloppy. It was too precise, too coordinated, too perfectly missing the exact pieces that would answer the simplest questions. And once people noticed that pattern, that's when suspicion stopped being a fringe idea and started becoming the main conversation. And here's where things take a sharp turn. When the public heard Kash Patel was overseeing the investigation, most people expected intensity, transparency, and pressure, the kind that approach digs until it hits bedrock. But instead, everything around Kash's involvement started feeling restricted, quiet, filtered, almost like the investigation was being walled off instead of opened up. The first red flag? Certain lines of inquiry were reportedly shut down before they even got going. People inside the system whispered that foreign intel angles were dismissed way too fast, long before all leads were exhausted. Then came the strange moments. Officials suddenly refusing to comment, files no longer accessible, and anyone asking too many questions being told they were misinformed or stirring panic. That's not how transparency works. That's how narrative management works. And with every week that passed, it seemed like Kash's priority wasn't uncovering what happened, but containing what might come out. The case tightened instead of expanding. The flow of information slowed to a drip, and the public noticed hard. Because when you're running an investigation that's supposedly airtight, you don't need gag orders shielding thousands of witnesses or bizarre PR statements acting like curiosity is a threat. The irony is brutal. The man who should have been pulling every thread suddenly looked like he was cutting them. And once people realized that, they started asking the one question Kash really didn't want to hear. Who benefits from shutting everything down instead of letting the truth breathe? If there's one part of this story that truly makes people pause, it's Erika Kirk's reaction. Most spouses in her position would be demanding every file, every recording, every scrap of information. They'd be challenging officials, pressuring investigators, and refusing to let the case settle until the truth was undeniable. But Erika, she's doing the opposite. She keeps repeating there's nothing to hide, even as the list of unexplained gaps grows longer than the official timeline itself. Her public appearances don't help. She talks about moving forward, about new work, about blessings, while the biggest questions surrounding her husband's final moments hang unanswered. And instead of pressing security or asking why certain footage vanished or why the investigation seems so tightly managed, she behaves like the official story is perfectly complete. That disconnect is what makes people uneasy. It's the emotional mismatch, the almost rehearsed calm, the way she avoids every red flag like it's not even there. But the most eyebrow-raising moment? She kept the exact same security team that failed Charlie. The same team that didn't clear the rooftop. The same team that was supposed to protect him on the day he was shot. That isn't just unusual, it's unheard of. If your husband was taken out under their watch, why would you ever trust them again? Why would you keep them closer? That's the part that turns suspicion into theory. Because when someone acts like they're terrified of the truth coming out, people start wondering if the truth threatens them most. Now, this is where the story stops being strange and starts turning downright explosive. Because just days before Charlie was killed, he didn't just make some routine announcement. He launched a full-scale internal audit of TPUSA. Not a light review, not a casual check-in, a deep dive into spending, payouts, and accounts that reportedly weren't adding up. That move alone would have rattled anyone who benefited from the old system, and according to insiders, plenty of people did. Whispers started circulating that money was moving in ways nobody could justify. Expenses with no receipts, contracts that made no sense, funds disappearing from places where they absolutely shouldn't have. And if Charlie's audit had been completed, it could have exposed tens of millions in questionable movement, the kind of revelations that don't just ruin reputations, but end careers and sever donor relationships overnight. And speaking of donors, that's another storm entirely. Rumors claim Charlie was getting pressure from some of his biggest financiers, the kind of donors who expect influence, silence, and loyalty in return for their checks. Allegedly, when he wouldn't play along, threats started coming in, funding pulled, pushback intensified. A screenshot even circulated where Charlie said he felt bullied and was tired of being controlled. If even half of that is true, it explains why certain people were desperate for the audit to die before the truth surfaced. And here's the part nobody can ignore. Erika has never mentioned the audit, not once, not even to acknowledge it existed. For someone who says there's nothing to hide, she's awfully quiet about the one thing Charlie was investigating right before everything went dark. Of all the people who could have stepped into this chaos, nobody expected it to be Dave Chappelle, and definitely not like this. He didn't rant, he didn't point fingers, he didn't accuse anyone of anything. All he said was one brutally honest sentence. Right now in America, if you even talk about Charlie Kirk, you'll get canceled. That's it. That's the whole line. But the reaction? Instant wildfire. Within hours, people twisted his words, clipped the quote, and spun it into a narrative he never actually said. Suddenly, he was mocking the widow, disrespecting Charlie, or feeding conspiracies. But Chappelle wasn't taking a side. He was highlighting exactly what everyone else has been whispering. The fear around this case is unnatural. The silence isn't organic. The pressure to stop asking questions is coming from somewhere higher than Twitter trolls. And here's the part that really rattled the establishment. Dave's audience listens. His influence cuts across politics, media, and culture. When he points out something strange, millions of people start paying attention. People who weren't even following Charlie's case before. Overnight, Erika's reactions were being dissected. Kash Patel's decisions were suddenly under a microscope. And the shady gaps in the investigation? They looked a whole lot more deliberate. Chappelle didn't reveal new evidence. He revealed the fear around the evidence that's missing. And that one observation was enough to shake the entire narrative loose, exposing just how desperately certain people want this story sealed and forgotten. After everything we've peeled back, the missing footage, the sealed files, the gag orders, Erika's unshakable calm, Kash's tight grip on the investigation, the money trails Charlie was trying to expose, and Dave Chappelle blowing the conversation wide open, one truth is impossible to ignore. This story does not behave like an open and shut case. It behaves like a box someone is desperate to keep taped shut. Every time someone says nothing to hide, another contradiction slips out. Every time officials insist the investigation is airtight, another leak suggests the exact opposite. And the people raising questions aren't fringe voices. They're former insiders, longtime supporters, even members of Charlie's own circle who can't shake the feeling that the official narrative was assembled too quickly, too cleanly, too conveniently. What makes this case so unsettling isn't just the uncanny timing or the missing evidence. It's the emotional choreography around it. Erika's insistence on moving forward without digging. Kash's instinct to contain instead of clarify. The donors who allegedly wanted control. The audit that could have blown everything open. And the sudden way Charlie's last major decision vanished from the conversation the moment he died. And through all of this, Dave Chappelle's observation lingers in the air. Why is everyone so afraid to even talk about Charlie? Why does asking questions feel dangerous? Why does transparency trigger hostility instead of relief? If there's truly nothing to hide, then letting the truth breathe should be the easiest part. But every unanswered question pushes the story deeper into the shadows. And more people are waking up to the fact that silence is the biggest red flag of all.